before the stars were hung like lanterns over night's breathless silence, before the rivers carved their hymns into the bones of earth, before the word, "Let there be," split eternity into time, God was not a flicker, not a forming thought, but fullness, radiance, flame. He was not born, he did not begin. He is the origin of all origins, the Trinity before time, the love before light. In him, Ethiopia was not forgotten. It was remembered first. The Garden of Eden, kissed by Gihon's waters, wrapped in the soil of ancient black kingdoms, whispers to you now. You were never left out. You were always at the center. They told you Ham was cursed. But what if they lied? What if the first man kissed by sunlight bore the brilliance of heaven in melanin skin? What if Jesus, the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world, wasn't plan B, but the first and final word of love? They said you came later, that the gospel reached you like a ripple. But what if Africa was the spring? What if the cross was carved long before Calvary, etched in the altars of Cush, sung in the Psalms of Sheba, guarded in the stones of Aksum? What else have they hidden from you? Why is the image of God so often painted pale, when the dust that formed Adam bore the same hue as yours? Why does history erase what heaven wrote in gold? Stay, listen, breathe this in. In this sacred story you will uncover what religion buried. You will walk through creation, into redemption, through the side of Adam to the side pierced at the cross, and see how God restores what empire shattered. In this video, you will witness how Ethiopia shaped biblical legacy from Eden to Revelation. Why you, yes you, were never an afterthought in God's design. And how truth, once forgotten, rises again like morning. So drop a comment below. I am not forgotten. I am part of the eternal story. Like, share, subscribe. Because this isn't just history, it's healing. And it begins now. God outside of time, the eternal I am, before clocks ticked and shadows stretched, before the sun first blazed across creation's canvas, there was no then and no now, only God, not watching time, but authoring it, not trapped in seconds, but cradling eternity in his breath. He is not one who becomes. He is not a process, but a presence, not unfolding, but unmoved. The Alpha and the Omega, not merely titles in Greek, but a declaration of sovereignty, a thunderous whisper. I am the beginning, I am the end, and I hold every heartbeat in between. We measure life in years, we mourn wasted minutes, we fear the ticking, but he stands outside the hourglass, shaping the very sands. Revelation 1:8 does not offer a concept, it offers a being. I am the Lord God who is, and who was, and who is to come, the Almighty. He does not shift with empires or decay with seasons. There is no perhaps in his voice, no maybe in his character. Only certainty, only presence, only power that does not flicker. And still, this infinite one chooses to be near, not distant, not mechanical, but close, intimate, ever here. He who formed the timeline is also the one who steps into it, walking beside your suffering, weaving grace through your mistakes. Imagine it. Before you were a thought in your mother's prayers, he had already numbered your days. Not because you earned it, but because his love is not chained to calendars. Isaiah 46:10 declares, I make known the end from the beginning. My purpose will stand. His purpose is not subject to economic collapse, not rewritten by wars, not cancelled by your detours. It is fixed, like the stars he named, like the promises he speaks. This is not theory. This is your anchor in a shifting world. When the market crashes, when the marriage crumbles, when the doctor shakes his head, the eternal I Am remains unchanged, and his arms remain open. He doesn't panic like we do. He doesn't edit plans like we must. He doesn't flinch when the enemy knocks, for he wrote the story in fire and mercy before the serpent ever slithered into Eden. So breathe. Your life is not a gamble. Your journey is not random. You're not floating in chaos. You are rooted in sovereign design. Drop this truth into the comments. My God does not change. Let the world know you're held by one who holds time itself. And as we step further into the mystery of why he created anything at all, hold tight. Because it wasn't out of need, but out of overflowing glory. Love before light, the fellowship of the Trinity. Before a single spark shattered the darkness, before molecules hummed or angels sang, there was love. Not the love that waits to be earned, not the love that flinches at scars, but the eternal kind, pre-existent, unbreaking, overflowing. God was not alone in eternity. He was communion. The Father loving the Son glorifying the Father, the Spirit moving between them, a divine dance of delight that needs no audience. This is the Trinity, not a doctrine to memorize, but a heartbeat to encounter. John 17:24. Father, you loved me before the foundation of the world. Before time was a thread, love was already a fabric. Before sin entered the story, intimacy was already written in holy ink. God didn't create because he was bored. He wasn't lonely, sitting on a throne of silence. He was, and is, complete joy, infinite fullness, endless affection. He needed nothing, yet chose you. This is the mystery that humbles galaxies. The Trinity didn't make man to fill a void. They created from the abundance of their union. Like a song too glorious to remain unheard, like a fire too brilliant to stay hidden. You weren't made from pity. You were formed from fellowship. From the center of relationship came your identity. And the Trinity doesn't just love, they invite. You, dust and breath and glory and grief, are being drawn into the same eternal circle that spun before matter was conceived. Through Jesus, we're not simply forgiven, we're welcomed into the eternal embrace. The same Spirit that hovered over the waters now hovers over your chaos. The same Son who was loved before time now fights for your heart. The same Father who authored creation calls you child. So this is not religion. This is reunion. When you feel unworthy, remember, he didn't love you after the cross. He loved you before the cradle. When you think you're too broken, remember the invitation was sent before you ever fell. Let your soul respond. I was loved before light. Comment those words to mark this truth in your spirit. Let the darkness hear it. Let your past bow to it. You are not tolerated. You are celebrated in the very chambers of divine delight. Now take this love with you, because from it flows the why behind creation's explosion. Not a reaction, not a repair, but a revelation of glory bursting through abundance. Overflow, not emptiness. Why God created it all. Have you ever asked why? Why galaxies? Why time? Why breath, sorrow, laughter, oceans, and you? If God was already full, already light, already love, why this? Here's the truth that tears down centuries of misconception. Creation was not born from divine deficiency. It was born from divine delight. Isaiah 43:7 says it plainly. everyone who is called by my name, whom I created for my glory. His glory was too vast to stay veiled, his joy too weighty to be confined. Like a fountain overflows, like sunlight breaks every barrier, like symphonies demand to be heard, creation exploded from God's goodness. It wasn't a project. It wasn't a patch for his boredom. It was a mirror designed to reflect what already was: glory, wisdom, generosity, majesty. Look at the mountains. They don't rise because they're needed. They rise because he is glorious. The oceans don't crash because he lacked sound. They roar because he is power made manifest. The stars don't burn to light his way. They shimmer because he is brilliance beyond containment. And yet, with all that wonder, only one creation was made in his image. You, formed not from stardust, but from divine intention, shaped by hands that never tremble, breathed into by the one who authored breath. Genesis 1:27 sings your origin. So God created man in his own image. Male and female he created them. Not as copies, as reflections, not as servants, as sons and daughters with destiny, not just dignity. But there's more. Being made in his image means more than existing. It means revealing his mercy in your kindness, his justice in your choices, his creativity in your calling. You weren't created to survive. You were created to shine. To carry the presence of the eternal I Am into a broken world, still echoing with Eden's ache. That ache, it's in you too, a longing to return, a whisper that says, you were made for more than this, because you were. And even before your first breath, before Adam's lungs filled with wind and wonder, God had already decided you were worth it. So stand in that truth. Declare it. I am not an accident. I am the overflow of eternal glory. Let the world hear it. Type it below. Speak it in your mirror. Sing it in your doubt. Because the next part of this story will shake everything you thought you knew. About salvation, about sin, about your role in eternity. We're just getting started. The divine image. What it means to bear God's likeness. You are not random. You are not a shadow cast by chance. You are formed in the image of God, crafted from divine intention, infused with eternal breath, designed not merely to exist, but to reflect glory. Genesis 1:27 does not whisper, it thunders. So God created man in his own image, male and female he created them. Not a copy, not a clone, but a reflection of mercy, justice, beauty, dominion. A vessel, clay kissed by eternity, bearing the fingerprint of the I Am. You were made to reveal wisdom through your words, compassion through your hands, creativity through your gifts, truth through your walk. What separates you from the lion or the eagle, from the stars or the sea? They obey, but you embody. You are the only one called to carry his presence, to become a mirror of what heaven looks like on earth. This means your skin, wonderfully made and beautifully shaded, your voice, your vision, your story. All of it was sculpted with sacred precision. Your laugh holds echoes of Eden. Your tears are understood by the one who stores every drop. To be made in God's image is to be called to co-create, to walk into chaos and bring order, to face injustice and manifest mercy. To be like him, not in form, but in function. This is not a metaphor, it's your identity, and yet, how often we forget. We shrink, we hide, we mimic lesser images, those shaped by culture, fear, fame. But today, remember this truth. You were not made in the image of trauma, not in the image of your past, not in the image of broken systems. You were made in the image of the God who does not change. Speak it aloud. I bear the image of the eternal. Write it in the comments as a declaration against every lie that tried to redefine you. Let this truth transform how you see yourself, not as someone reaching for worth, but as someone created from worth. This is your starting point. Not failure, not shame, but reflection. And when you forget it, look again at the one who never forgets you, because even in your wandering, his image remains, waiting to shine through your return. And as you return, you'll understand what it means to be part of a greater revelation, one that continues with a mystery hidden in plain sight, the true origin of woman, the side, not the rib, the forgotten power of woman's design. We were told a rib, just a bone, tucked beneath skin, was all that was taken. But the Hebrew tells a different story. Not a rib, a side, a half, a structural, sacred space. Tsela. The same word used for the side of the ark, for the chambers of Solomon's temple, for the architecture of God's own dwelling. And from that side, God did not simply form. He built. Bana, the word used to describe constructing temples, not slapped together, not rushed, but shaped with strategy, structure, and divine artistry. Woman was not made from spare parts. She was revealed from within. The missing piece that made man complete, not beneath his feet, not behind his back, but at his side. Genesis 2:22 is no afterthought. It's a blueprint of equality, of sacred partnership, of mutual reflection. And when Adam sees her, he doesn't name her like the animals. He recognizes her. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This is me, my mirror, my match. Not a helper in the modern sense, but Isa Kenegdo in Hebrew. A power facing him, equal, essential, mighty. This was Eden's design, before the fall, before blame, before domination crept into the garden like a thief. But then came the serpent, and then came fear, and then came the fracture. Man points a finger. The woman you gave me. And the unity once lived becomes a hierarchy imposed. He will rule over you, God says. Not as a blessing, but as a curse. Not his design, but the consequence of broken fellowship. For centuries, we built our doctrines on that fracture. We made silence a virtue, submission a weapon. We taught hierarchy where God had placed harmony. And in doing so, we erased half the image of God from pulpits, policies, and purpose. But Christ came not just to save. He came to restore, to return us not to Genesis 3, but to Genesis 2, to the side, not the rib, to equality, not control, to purpose, not oppression. Every time he elevated a woman, the Samaritan at the well, the adulterous woman spared from stones, Mary Magdalene sent as the first resurrection preacher. He was whispering, I remember how I built you. Woman of God, you are not secondary. You are not optional. You are a cathedral of wisdom, a living sanctuary carved from the side of glory. Let every daughter reading declare, I was built by design, not default. Write it below. Break agreement with every lie that reduced you. And brothers, rise too, not to dominate, but to walk side by side. To reflect a partnership rooted in eternity, not patriarchy. This is how the image becomes whole again, not by lifting one above the other, but by returning to the divine side. And what broke in the garden will now lead us to the deeper truth, that even the fall didn't surprise God. Even our brokenness was already held in the plan of restoration. sin, blame, and the fracture of oneness. It happened fast, a whisper, a bite, a shiver in the wind. And suddenly, shame covered what once danced in the open. The garden held its breath. The world cracked, and unity unraveled. It wasn't just disobedience, it was division. Man blames woman. Woman blames serpent. And for the first time, creation hears a new sound. Blame. The woman you gave me, she gave me the fruit. With one sentence, he not only blames Eve, he blames God. This is what sin does. It doesn't just separate us from God, it separates us from each other. It breeds fear, control, power games, walls between flesh and flesh. God speaks. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Not as law, but as consequence. As sorrow, not solution. We've built cultures from that curse. We wrote laws, built empires, structured marriages and ministries on a fracture. But it was never the original blueprint. Before blame, there was belonging. Before domination, there was design. Before hierarchy, there was harmony. And so the cross was not just to heal your soul, but to heal the split. Jesus, the second Adam, came not just to reverse sin, but to restore unity. The veil tore, the side opened. The new covenant began not with domination, but with a wound that welcomes. In him, there is neither male nor female, not because we are the same, but because we are the same in worth, in calling, in reflection. This truth breaks systems. It disrupts theology wrapped in patriarchy. It reclaims identity, yours, mine, ours. So today, let us break with the curse. Let us return to the design. Let us say aloud, I was not made to rule. I was not made to bow. I was made to walk in unity. Comment it below. Speak it into your generations. Let the garden bloom again in our minds, our homes, our hearts. Because the next revelation will unfold not just how we were broken, but how we were always seen, and how redemption was never an emergency plan. It was the first chapter, waiting to be lived. Redemption was not plan B. The lamb slain before the world began, before Adam ever fell, before Eve ever reached, before the serpent ever whispered, the lamb was already slain, not in panic, not as a patchwork fix, but in perfect preparation. This is not the story of a God caught off guard, scrambling to clean what man stained. This is the story of a God who already knew, already wept, already planned for redemption to rise before rebellion could speak. Ephesians chapter 1, 4-5 says it plain. He chose us in him before the foundation of the world. Not after sin, before stars, before galaxies, before time itself wrapped itself in light. In his eternal mind you were already seen, your name already whispered in love, your wounds already counted, your salvation already secured. 2 Timothy 1:9 affirms, this grace was given us in Christ Jesus before the beginning of time. He didn't wait for you to clean up. He clothed you before you knew you were naked. He called you beloved before you called yourself broken. Redemption is not a second chance. It's the first intention. Jesus is not a backup plan. He is the blueprint. The cross wasn't plan B. It was plan always. And this shifts everything, because it means your failure does not surprise him. Your detour does not disqualify you. Your scars are not outside his script. You were never a mistake he had to manage. You are a masterpiece. He already imagined. Even your tears are part of a redemptive thread. Even your silence is held within a divine song. Even your most shattered parts are the very places his light longs to dwell. Revelation 13:8 names him the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Before Eden's trees ever trembled, Calvary's tree was waiting. Before shame-covered skin, grace-covered eternity. Let this truth take root. You were not saved because he had to. You were saved because he wanted you. Because his love is not reactive. It is original, foundational, final. If that touches you, write it below. Redemption was written before my sin. Let this confession pierce the darkness that told you grace was earned. You don't need to be perfect. You only need to be willing to rest in a love that saw the worst of you and still called you chosen. Because when we understand this, we see that the story of salvation didn't start with man's fall, but with God's eternal desire to dwell with the ones he made in love. Ethiopia, Eden, and the hidden biblical legacy. Long before maps were drawn, before colonial borders carved lines across soil, there was a land, green, ancient, burning with divine memory, a place named not by conquerors, but by Scripture itself, Ethiopia. Genesis 2 names the rivers of Eden, and among them the Gihon, which compasses the whole land of Ethiopia. This was not metaphor. This was location. This was origin. This was home, the dust that formed Adam. It may have been dark like your skin, rich like your roots, sacred like the land that bore the breath of God. Archaeology calls her Lucy. Faith calls her proof. A woman whose bones echoed through time, found in Ethiopia, telling the world that life began not in the palaces of Europe, but in the cradle of African soil. And yet, how many sermons erased her? How many pews forgot the rivers of Eden ran through black earth? How many textbooks muted the drums of Axum, the wisdom of Sheba, the throne of Solomon's seed? They told you the gospel came to Africa, but they never told you it was birthed through Africa. The Queen of Sheba came to Solomon, not empty-handed, but with gold, spices, incense, and questions. She left with more than answers. She left with legacy. Ethiopian tradition says she bore his son Menelik, who carried the Ark of the Covenant into the highlands of Axum, where it is said to rest even now, guarded not by myth, but by monks. Ethiopia embraced the faith before Rome ever legalized it. Before Constantine, there was Izana. Before the Vatican, there were churches carved into living stone by hands dark with soil and sacred with calling. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church fasts like Israel, chants older than Latin, and walks in rhythm with the God of Abraham. Unbent, unbought, uncolonized. This is not lost history. This is stolen memory. And we are reclaiming it. The word was never whitewashed by heaven, only by history. But heaven remembers. And now, so do we. Let every voice speak this truth. Africa was never forgotten. It was first. Comment it, claim it, teach it to your children. You are not on the margins of God's story. You are the opening chapters, the ancient ink, the living scroll. And if Eden touched Ethiopia, then it means redemption flows back through that same land, that your lineage is not a side note, it is a sacred beginning. This is how we return, not just to God, but to our true reflection in His story. And that story continues by tearing down the lies that once justified chains. Ham was never cursed, the lie that justified slavery. It was not Ham. Let the echo be clear. It was Canaan. One son, one name, one act. Yet centuries of chains were forged on a misread verse and a malicious agenda, Genesis 9 tells the story. Noah, shamed and exposed. Ham sees Canaan is cursed, not because of skin, not because of race, but because of dishonor, yet empires twisted it. Theologians bent it. Colonizers weaponized it. They rewrote the curse onto all black bodies, using scripture to sanctify slavery, to baptize brutality, to justify injustice. They told you Ham was cursed. They told you his skin bore shame. They told you Africa was marked by God for servitude. They lied. The Bible does not say what they claimed. It does not curse Ham, nor Cush, nor Misraim, nor Put. Only Canaan. And Canaan's land was later inherited by Israel. Not Africa, not Ethiopia, not Nubia. Even the book of Jubilees reveals the deeper truth, that Canaan was judged for trespassing, for settling on Shem's land without right. This was a land issue, not a lineage curse. But twisted hands used twisted words to twist the lives of millions. And the Western Church, silent or complicit, let the lie grow roots. We must tear them out, because the descendants of Ham built empires, founded civilizations, carried wisdom older than Athens, brilliance deeper than Babylon. They forged iron before Europe. They built pyramids in Meroe. They ruled Egypt in the 25th dynasty. They stood in power while other nations still crawled. And yet, all of that was reduced to one verse, one curse, one lie. But truth outlives distortion. And today, the descendants of Ham rise, not in shame, but in sacred remembrance. You were never cursed. You were crowned. You were not broken. You were builders. You were not property. You were priests, pharaohs, prophets, patriarchs. Let it be known again. Ham was not cursed. I am not cursed. I am called. Type it. Declare it. Break the chain with your words. Because once you know who you are, no one can tell you what you're not. And this truth prepares the way for what comes next. The kings of Cush, the brilliance of black empires, and the royalty written in your blood. Kings of Cush, Egypt, and the black foundation of civilization. Long before crowns were forged in Europe's shadow, before Caesar's empire reached its peak, there stood a people in the light of the Nile. Black kings, black wisdom, black legacy. Etched not in myth, but in the living stones of history. Cush, the son of Ham, birthed a lineage not cursed, but crowned. A kingdom stretching from Nubia to Ethiopia, from Meroe's pyramids to the temples of Thebes. These were not fragments of forgotten tribes. They were builders of nations, keepers of divine technology, masters of iron, fathers of theology. The 25th dynasty of Egypt, once ruled by Cushite pharaohs, stood in the shadow of no one. Their skin kissed by sun, their minds carved by wisdom, they governed with justice, they led with law, they worshipped the One before polytheism seduced the earth. Herodotus, the father of Greek history, wrote not with envy, but with awe, that Egypt had learned from Ethiopia, not the other way around. And Ethiopia, in turn, learned from heaven. From the scrolls of Alexandria to the shrines of Aksum, black hands carried light. They mapped the stars, they healed with herbs, they taught in temples, they translated mysteries into mathematics, and built sanctuaries aligned to celestial purpose. Yet history erased them, whitewashed them, distorted them into caricatures, taught the world that civilization began in the West, when in truth, the beginning was black. Even today, we walk past museums holding our ancestors, labeled primitive, in glass cages, while their architecture still stands taller than modern skylines. And it matters, because when a child is told his ancestors were only slaves, he forgets he comes from kings. He forgets he is descended not from shame, but from sacred strategy, sacred sound, sacred science. The blood of Cush still flows, not only in Sudan or Ethiopia, but in the diaspora, in the rhythm of black voices, in the fire of black churches, in the breath of black faith. This is not nostalgia. This is recovery. To say, I am not a footnote in history. I am its foundation. Type it in the comments if you feel it burning inside. My ancestors built empires. I build legacy. Because when we see ourselves rightly, we reflect God rightly, and the restoration of our dignity is part of the restoration of His story. And that story moves forward, not just in power, but in blood. A bloodline that returns to the second Adam, to the side once pierced, to the design once broken, now being made whole. Jesus, the second Adam, and the restoration of the side. In Eden, the side was opened. From Adam's flesh came woman, from unity came reflection. But in Gethsemane and on Golgotha's hill, another side was opened, not with anesthesia, but with agony, not to birth woman, but to birth restoration. They pierced his side, and blood and water poured out, and the ground, cursed since Adam, drank redemption for the first time. Jesus did not come to repair Eden. He came to reverse the curse, to return us, not to the garden, but to the glory behind it, to restore the side-by-side calling between man and woman, between image and image, between heaven and earth. Paul calls him the second Adam. The first man became a living being, the last Adam, a life-giving spirit. And in that life, he breathed again. Just as God once breathed into dust, Jesus now breathes into death and raises design from the ashes. Look at how he walked. He lifted the woman caught in adultery, refusing shame, restoring voice. He sat beside the Samaritan, breaking cultural chains, offering living water. He called Mary by name outside the tomb, commissioning her as the first preacher of resurrection. Jesus didn't just preach equality. He practiced it. He protected it. He redeemed the side. The early church tried to erase it. Patriarchal cultures tried to silence it. But truth always resurrects. And now it's calling again. Because to reflect the Trinity, we must reflect partnership. Father, Son, Spirit, distinct, equal, unified. Man, woman, distinct, equal, unified. Not rivals, reflections, not hierarchy, holy harmony. This is the mystery of Ephesians 2:5. The two shall become one flesh, not just in marriage, but in mission, in ministry, in identity. So rise, women of God, not as helpers only, but as builders, prophets, co-heirs, and rise, men of God, not as rulers, but as brothers, protectors, partners in purpose. This is not feminism, it is Genesis reawakened. And if you feel something breaking off you right now, declare it. I was not created to dominate or disappear. I was made to walk in unity. Let heaven hear it. Let hell tremble at it, because the design has returned, and with it the glory. What this means for you, reclaiming your place in the divine story. You are not an extra in God's script. You are not a casualty of culture. You are not the echo of someone else's prayer. You are the answer, the reflection, the revelation. Before time began, He knew your name. He saw your frame. He marked your journey with mercy, planted your breath in His rhythm. Psalm 139:16 whispers it. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Not just your good days, all of them, the failed ones, the silent ones, The days you questioned if you mattered, the nights you cried into your pillow, the hours you wanted to quit. All of them written, all of them seen, all of them redeemed. You are not trying to find meaning. You were birthed from meaning, not manufactured by the world, manifested by heaven. This truth does more than comfort. It commissions. It calls you higher. It tells you to look in the mirror and say, I bear the image of the eternal I am. That's why the enemy attacks your identity. That's why shame clings to your ankles, because if you ever fully saw who you are, you would rise, you would speak, you would build, you would break generational chains with a sentence. You would step into rooms like royalty, not arrogance. Assignment. You were formed to reflect justice in corrupt systems, to reflect creativity in dry deserts, to reflect mercy where there's judgment, truth where there's confusion, light where there's shadow. This is more than a message. It's a mantle. Don't just receive it. Wear it. Walk in it. Speak it into your home. Whisper it into your children. Write it on the walls of your heart. I am not forgotten. I am written in the story of God. Comment it. Claim it. Let this moment be the marker where you stopped chasing value and started living from eternal identity. Because your next breath matters. Your next word carries power. Your next step changes legacies. You are not floating. You are being led by a hand that holds the galaxies. And the one who wrote your beginning is still writing your next chapter.